everybody, so in this video we are going to construct a variable angle pattern that's based on a pattern found on the minbar of the Mosque of Tulun in Cairo, Egypt. So here are 4 different variations that are possible with this construction we're going to make. And here is the original minbar pattern, which is one of the possibilities we're going to get from our construction. This is David Wade's photo archive pattern in IslamicArt.com. This is EGY0501. I will link this in the video description. And we are going to be constructing using geogebra.org/classic. Again, I will link all these things in the video description. And I'm going to follow the step-by-step tutorial that I posted on Patreon. I will link that PDF in the description as well. So I haven't changed any of my settings yet. So I'm going to start by right-clicking and show axes and show grid. You can also get to that in your settings by going to the x-axis, y-axis, or grid and clicking the checkbox. While I'm here, I'm going to change my labeling to new points only, and I'm going to show auxiliary objects, and I want to show my construction, or I want to sort by object type rather than construction order, and I want to show the definition in my algebra view. So I'm going to go ahead and close that, and I'm going to start by typing A equals 0, 0 in parentheses and B equals 1, 0 in parentheses. So that creates my first 2 points. Then I'm going to grab my regular polygon tool. Let me scroll in to zoom in. I'm going to click on A, then B, and I want 4 vertices. Then with my arrow move tool selected, I'm going to select this polygon and I'm going to change the opacity to 0 so that now when I click in it, I'm not selecting that polygon. I'm just grabbing my graphics view construction space. So then I'm going to grab my line tool and I'm going to put in line BD. Then I'm going to grab my angle bisector tool and I'm going to put in line ABD. And with my intersect tool, I'm going to construct point E. Next, I want to grab my parallel line tool and I'm going to construct a horizontal, not what I meant to do, a horizontal line, not a vertical line, through point E. Sorry about that. And then I'm going to reflect that line a couple of times over so that I get radial divisions around point E. Then I'm going to grab my intersect tool and I'm going to put in points F and G. And then I'm going to grab my circle with center through point and I'm going to put in circle FA. Next, I want another parallel line, this time a vertical line through G, and with my intersect tool, I'm going to construct point H. Then with my reflective outline tool, I want to reflect this circle over EG, and I'm going to put in a line connecting those 2 circle centers. Then with my parallel line tool, I'm going to put in a line through G that's parallel to FH. And then with my intersect tool, I want to grab this intersection right here, which is easiest to grab by selecting the 2 lines separately. So that gets me point I. Then I'm going to grab my parallel line tool again, and this time I want to put a vertical line through I and intersect where that hits the bottom. So that's going to be point J. In my tutorial, I somehow got off with my labeling. So I'm going to grab my point tool and just make a random point K out here so that all the rest of my labels match my tutorial. And then I'll come in later and delete point K because somehow I ended up with a point K in the construction. I don't know what happened, but just bear with me. So random point K out here so that everything is consistent. All right, so then this is going to be point L. Oh, I forgot to put in circle IJ. There we go. And this is going to be point M. And then I'm going to put in circle EL and BM. Let me move that point K out of the way. It's not actually on that circle. Okay. Let's complete our radial divisions about point E with our reflect about line tool. So I'm just going to reflect these lines over each other until I complete that. And I want to reflect these two circles over that central horizontal line. And that gets us step 9. Then step 10 is we're just going to construct some points. So point N is this one right here. Point O is this one right here. Point P is this one right here, which I'm going to have to select 2 lines to define. And point Q is right here. Next, we're going to construct our slider. So let's grab our slider tool. I'm just going to click in the upper left, and we want an angle slider that varies from 0 to 90 and increments by 0.5. And then I'm going to click OK. Oops. Always go back to your arrow tool. I'm going to set this on 22.5. So right now this isn't doing anything, it's just holding a number. But 22.5 is a good value for it to default to because that's our classic construction pattern. And we are going to rotate point B by the value held by the slider about point M. So I'm going to type into the input bar, rotate, open parentheses, B, comma alpha, so Alt A. I will link in the video description to keyboard shortcuts for those of you that are on a Mac, and comma point M. So this creates point B prime, and I'm going to put in line MB prime. So that line, which I'm going to color pink because it's a pattern line, is horizontal when we're at 22.5, but if I move my slider, obviously it goes diagonal. So I'm going to go back to 22.5 for just a little bit. And I can go ahead and hide point B prime so that it doesn't get in the way. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my angle bisector tool and I'm going to put in an angle bisector through JIM. I'm going to make this a dashed line. And with my intersect tool, I want where that first pattern line intersects that angle bisector. I'm going to play with my slider to make sure this is doing what I want it to do. And we can see that that point R travels along that angle bisector from point I to side AB, which is exactly what we want. So then I'm going to grab my reflect about line tool and I'm going to reflect this line over this line, and I'm going to construct point S here. Then with my line tool, I'm going to construct line RJ. This is a pattern line, so I'm going to put it pink. And just checking my slider, everything's working the way it should. And then I want to reflect line RJ over vertical IJ, and I want where this line intersects this line, so that's going to be point T. And then I'm going to reflect this line over that line. So there's a lot going on now, I know. Let's next put in this line right here, and I'm going to color that green so it stands out a little bit. And we're going to reflect points T, R, and M over that green line. So I'm going to reflect T, R, and M to get T prime, R prime, and M prime. And then I'm going to put in line OR prime. This is a pattern line, so it's going to be pink. And then where that line intersects the bottom, that's going to be my point K. So let me delete that point, and then I'm going to delete my point K, and then I'm going to grab my intersect tool, and now that's point K. I don't know what happened when I was making my tutorial. I must have created a random point somewhere by not going back to my arrow or move tool. So that little hack of just creating the random point K should get you where you need to be. But if you're not concerned about point names, you're not trying to follow the step-by-step PDF, it won't even make a difference. So, but if you want your point names to match mine, that's what you're going to have to do. Okay, so we've got point K. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to reflect points M and R over AB. And with our polygon tool, we're going to put in this hexagon. And we're going to reflect T, T prime, and O, and we're going to put in with our polygon tool our first octagon. So again, let's move our slider. When I'm at 22.5, I have a perfectly regular octagon and a parallel sided petal, but as I move my slider, different things happen. Okay. So then next, what I want is to grab my intersect tool, and I'm going to put in point U, and then I'm going to reflect MU over BU, and I want to grab my intersect tool and construct point V. Then we'll come back later and construct a central star right here, but we're just going to leave that bit alone for now. Let's see. So then what we're going to do is we're going to hide some lines that are in our way. So over here in the algebra view, I'm going to hide all those pink pattern lines, and I'm going to hide that angle bisector just to clean up our view a little bit. Then with my intersect tool, I want to construct point W here where that green line intersects this diagonal EB. And And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to reflect this hexagonal petal about point W. So I want reflect about point. I'm going to grab this hexagon and then I'm going to select point W, and now I have a petal here. All right, next I want to reflect points S and Z, S prime and Z over EB. So back to my reflective outline tool. So S prime and Z. No, not that one. Undo. I think I got my labeling off again, unfortunately. S prime and A1 will do. That's the one I want. And then we're going to put, so my labeling is going to be a little bit off from my step-by-step PDF. Oh well, that's okay. All right, so now I've got two petals here. The reason I didn't reflect this petal over this petal is because I already had quite a few of these points put in, and it would have created points on top of points that I already had, which will make it difficult to construct other things. So then I want to create my half petal. So I'm going to reflect this point and this point, and I'm going to put in this half petal here. And then I'm going to reflect this half petal over the horizontal. We aren't duplicating any points, so reflecting the whole thing is the best option. I'm going to grab my line tool and I'm going to put in this pattern line along the shoulder of that polygon. And then with my parallel line tool, I'm going to put in a horizontal line through point A, and then I'm going to reflect that line over here. So that gets us through step 26, so lots going on. Then I'm going to grab my intersect tool. Actually, let's zoom in here a little bit. Grab my intersect tool, and then I want to reflect here, and I want that intersection, and then I'm going to put in this half octagon. Quarter octagon. All right, so then we're going to have a half star right here. So basically what I want to do is just fill in the missing information. So I was just missing that point right there. So I'm going to grab my polygon tool and, oh, just kidding. That's not the only information I was missing. I must have never put in a particular line. B1. Oh, give me just a second. Yeah, so I need to construct a line. All right, so we're going to construct this line right here. So that is a pattern line. And then we want that intersection, and I want to reflect this point around. Now I'm ready to do my half star. So I'm going to go here, and then in and out, in and out. And I can move my slider and see how that half star changes. At 22.5, it's has right angles. This is a good point to save. So I like to call things by the date. And a descriptor. So this is today's July 9th, and this is Ib Tulun. Okay, so we've got kind of a lot of what we want. I do want one more petal here, but rather than just duplicating a petal, what I really want is a nice little sequence of 3 petals here. That'll be easier to work with later. So what I'm going to do is show the label here. So this is poly 4. So that, again, this is a little bit different than my step-by-step PDF. This was poly 5 in my PDF, but we're calling it poly 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type a sequence of rotations of, and I want to rotate poly 4. So I'm going to put that in curly brackets. And I want 8-fold divisions of the circle. So I can either do pi over 4 or 2 pi over 8 or 360 degrees over 8. I like using pi just because I'm lazy and don't like typing the degree symbol, but just for sake of making this understandable, I'm going to type 360 degrees, which I can use Alt-O to get the degree symbol, or I can use the little keyboard here, and there's the degree symbol. So I want 360 degrees over 8, and I have to use the arrow keys to get out of the fraction, times I, and then about point E, close parentheses, where I varies from 0 to 2. So let me go up to that list item so that you can see that code. So rotating poly 4 by 360 degrees over 8 times I about point E, where I varies from 0 to 2. And so now I have this object that's just those 3 petals. And that'll be nice and convenient when we're trying to construct our larger pattern later. All right, so next what I want to do is go over here to this bottom right corner of our square around point B, and we want to construct our central star. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by constructing the rest of my radial lines about point B. Let me put in line BC. I could have just reflected to get that line. I don't know why I didn't. I just didn't. And okay, so that gives us, let's put in line AB. All right, so I've got all those radial lines, and then we want to reflect these points around to create the rest of the vertices. So let's reflect U around. Again, these letters aren't really important. It's the locations of the points that are important. So I'm just using my Reflect About Line tool. And now with my polygon tool, I'm going to go in and out. And then back to where I started. Let's move our slider to check that it works. And it does. Let's save. All right, so we've got our central star. Cool. Let's construct now our central rosette and ring of octagons. So let's hide all of our lines except for, this is F3. So lines, show object, but then I want to go back down to F3, wherever that was, F3. All right, so I've hidden all my lines except for that central vertical. Let's hide all of our points as well, except for point B. How did A and B end up not at 0, 0, and 1, 0? Did I accidentally grab them and move them at some point? Weird. Anyway, so obviously, the reason I wanted them at 0, 0, and 1, 0 was so that my base was parallel, but I must have accidentally grabbed those points and moved them out of the way at some point. But you can always retype the coordinates for those 2 points, and since everything else is dependent on them, everything lines up and works the way it's supposed to. Okay, so I don't need poly 4 anymore either, so I'm going to hide poly 4 and also poly, what are you? You are poly 2 prime. And let's show labels on these. So this is poly 3. This is poly 2. This is Q1. This is Q1 prime. I can hide my conics also. I don't need those. Okay, so we want to create a sequence of rotations of poly 2 and poly 3 about point B. So let's go to our input bar. So I want a sequence of rotations of, in curly brackets, poly 2 and poly 3 by 360 degrees, alto for degrees, over 8, or pi over 4, which I like better, but we're just going to use 360 over 8, times I, about point B, where I varies from 0 to 7. So there's that line of code. And then what we want to do is show the rest of these labels. I'm going to construct half of these outer rosettes. So I'm going to create a sequence of rotations of Q1, Q1 prime, poly 5, and M1, so that first sequence we made, about point B, but I want to rotate this time by 4 divisions of the circle, so 360 degrees over 4, or pi over 2 times I about point B, where I varies from 0 to 3. I can now hide poly 5 and Q1 and Q1 prime, and also M1. And then I can reflect that sequence over this line. You can see we're almost there. Oh, I can go ahead and hide poly 2 and poly 3. So all I have left are my corner octagons, and that's going to be a similar sequence of rotations of Q2. I put the objects in curly brackets even when there's only one of them and not a list of them, just so that the code looks nicer, because otherwise it does like a sequence of rotations of points and then makes polygons out of the points, and it's like, I don't know, it looks really gross. So it's just nicer if you wrap those in curly brackets. So 360 degrees over 4 times I about point B, where I varies from 0 to 3. And what did I do wrong? I did something wrong. Sequence of rotations of Q2 by 360 over 4 times I about B. Oh, I didn't spell sequence right. That helps. There we go. And now I can hide my original square. I'm going to keep poly 6. I can hide Q2, and I can hide that line F3. I can hide point B, and I'm going to right click and select all of this and make my line thickness the same, make color all the same, and make my line opacity all the same. So for some reason, by default, polygon line opacity is not 100%, but anyway. So now I can right click on my slider, turn on the animation, and this is what happened, which is pretty cool. So we get all these different patterns from the same pattern, just with different angles. So again, it's that 22.5 degrees. That's the classic one. I really like the 30-degree, well, close to 30-degree version because it's almost a circle. But play around with it. Tag me at Mathemartiste on Instagram if you construct this and share it there. And I'll see you in the next one. All right, thanks.